Hi there, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today we're creating backgrounds with Dylusions paint. A simple brayering technique is all you need to create easy backgrounds with paint. Of course, if you grab a paintbrush and a stippling brush, you've also got tools to create a middle ground and a painted focal for your card as well. Really easy process to do, so let's take a look. First, I'm going to bring in my white matte cardstock and my paint. So the paint I'm working with is the Dylusions line of paint. This is from Ranger. And I love these paints first and foremost because the colors are absolutely gorgeous. They're quite true to what you see on the label. They are also a fast drying acrylic paint and they blend with one another beautifully. So this is what I'm using for this card today. So another thing that I need to have on hand, I need to get the paint out of the jar, so I'm using a little palette knife here. You can also use a plastic disposable knife. You could also use your finger, quite frankly, but I like to use my palette knife. I've always got that on hand. Then I also need to have my rubber brayer, and this is a little brayer from Ranger. This is about 2.5 inches long, and as you can see, mine is well loved. So I'm going to set aside the tools and open up the paint. I am working on my craft sheet, and this is going to be important because I'm using this as my palette. I'll grab my palette knife here, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the paint on the back of the palette knife. So if you were scooping, you'd use this side, but I'm pulling it out like so. And then this way, I can just put it onto my craft sheet like so. Now I do need to put the lid on here pretty quickly because, as I mentioned, the paint does dry pretty quickly, so you also want to keep the lid on there as well. Now what I'm going to do is add a little bit of water to this just so it's a little bit more fluid. So I'm going to add some water in here. Use my palette knife to blend that, and then this way I have something that's just going to be a little bit more fluid and a bit more diluted for me to do my brayering with. And then I'll grab my brayer and simply roll this through the paint. Now I do want to make sure that I'm getting the paint all over the brayer as much as I can, and then right across my white cardstock. Now you'll notice I'm not trying to cover the entire piece. I'm not trying to paint it a solid color. In this case, I just want to have a little bit of white showing, but I want some of that beautiful faux texture on there. Now all I need to do is just let this dry. I do want to clean off my brayer pretty quickly, and I can use a baby wipe for that. This will dry very, very quickly. In fact, it's getting there right now, but I'm going to set this aside while I work on my card focal. So I'll pull in my stamped image here. Now this is a stamp that I have pulled from the Eclectica stamp set, and this is the ESN 17 set. This is one that I designed for PaperArtsy, and I'm using this beautiful leaf image over here. This is going to be my focal. So I've stamped that using Ranger's Jet Black archival ink, and I've just stamped it onto regular matte cardstock, and I want to get my puddle of paint here even more fluid, even more watery. I'm going to add some more water here, and then I'm going to use some small paint brushes just to fill in the leaves. And I do want this to be a very diluted color because I don't want to obliterate the lines of the leaves on here in the detail of this. This is where those little tiny paintbrushes, the very fine tipped paintbrushes that you can find at the art supply store, really come in handy. And because I use them so often, I tend to pick up a handful of them whenever I'm running low or whenever I'm at the art supply store. When they're dry, you can use them to brush away embossing powder granules from a stamped and embossed image before you heat set it. You can also use them for very fine detail painting like this here. You can also use them for spattering and mark making too. So lots of different ways to use them, but they really, really do come in handy. So it's good to have some of those on hand for things just like this. So as you can see, I'm just gently filling in the leaves themselves. And I'm not being too terribly careful because I do like to have that watercolor effect. And then I've got my leaves all painted in. Now, while I've still got this really nice big puddle here, I'm going to grab my stippling brush. And again, just dip it into that area that has a lot more of the water. Maybe even add a little bit more water if you want to. If you can get it out of your spray bottle. Here we go. Pick this up with my stippling brush, and then I'm going to add something to the kind of the medium area of here, because we've got the stamped image as the focal, we've got the brayered background, and then we want some color and some texture just in the middle area there. And so for this, I'm just going to spatter with my stippling brush. So I'm just running my finger across here, and I'm getting a very fine misting. Now if I wanted to, what I could do then is grab one of these little tiny brushes, and I'm going to take much more water, in fact just dab some out here onto my craft sheet, pick up some on my very fine brush, pick up some paint as well, make this really watery, and then I can get some larger size droplets by tapping the handle of my brush. So you can experiment with the size of the spatters that you're getting as well. So a fine misting is going to come from your stipple brush, and by tapping the handle of a fine brush with this loaded with some watery paint, you're able to get a really pretty variegated effect. Then you just need to let this dry, and then it will be time to put the card together. So what I'm going to do is move this aside, and I'm going to bring in my card, being careful not to put it or my hand in this puddle of paint, because you know you can use this again too. So I've simply trimmed this down onto red cardstock, a really nice contrast to that beautiful turquoise, and then matted it up onto the brayered background, which is also matted onto red. Just added a little bit of red gingham ribbon on here tied into a bow, and then the stamped sentiment. This is also from the Eclectica set here too, so we've got several Christmas sentiments on here, although I do think that you could use this beautiful leaf and some of the other elements all year round. So it's Christmas and beyond. And this has just been matted onto red and then added to overlap slightly that beautiful leafy branch on there. So this is how you can use a Dylusions paint for a card background as well as for a painted focal piece. I hope you enjoyed today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please stop by my website at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with a new video at the first of every month. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I'll see you again